We are fine, well, okay.
Okay, so welcome to the planning board meeting for September 4th. I'll begin with roll call. Alden Clark.
Here.
Bob Cope.
Here.
Charlie Palmisano. Amy Pennington. Here. Heather Rogers is going to be absent. Jen Bluestein.
Here.
Ryan Balcom.
Here.
Here. So we have five regular members and five regular members and two associates. And we will move into the public hearings. And before we do, we did not keep track of who was not at last meeting. Who was not there.
I was not.
And Charlie. Have either of you watched the recording of the last meeting?
No, you have watched it.
Okay. Is that okay? Any of the meeting as opposed to?
It'd be preferable.
So just because of what I'm going to do is I'm going to have both Jen and Brian sit in and I can skip the vote of this one. Is that okay?
I'm a fast.
Oh, you read also. Okay.
Cases.
Okay. Well, but you vote then. This is the injection. You do the applicants. And I guess just to be safe, sit in for. Okay, so the first, with that out of the way, the first item of business is the application of KRE Nominal Trust for 3 Center Street special permit for the short-term rental unit, was continued from our meeting. And we have, I don't know whether you have anything new to add. I know we have some information from the city attorney, but if you have something new to add, please feel free to.
Tiffany Bartholomew for Independence Street.
Keith Avlo, 36 Water Street.
We don't really actually have anything more to add. We just wanted to clarify 3 Center Street because of the public comment. There was some debate over whether or not it was primarily residential. So I did provide like a visual of what is on 3 Center Street currently, which is mostly commercial actually and parking lots. So that was the only clarification I wanted to provide. So you'll see the first house up at the top of Center, the top of the diagram, is an empty residential house that Keith has been trying to buy for, I don't know, 15 years. The next one is 3 Center. Then you have 3.5, which is the wine and cheese. There is a really nice occupied residential, that's the green. There is the inn. There's 3 Centers parking space that I highlighted again. There's an unoccupied residential that's up for sale, and then a really nice occupied residential at the end of the street. Everything else is parking lot, newspaper, commercial, restaurant, and that's fine. So that's the only thing we had to add was the clarity of the street.
Okay, thank you. Anything from the members of the board, any questions that you won't be able to answer last time, or would like to continue to ask before we ask the legal counsel for input? So I guess the next thing, Paris, if you could, the 2 questions that were up in the air that you provided legal opinions to. One was a question about the abutters notice and whether I think the question was whether the condominium property behind the parking lot should have been, whether all the condo owners should have been notified. There's only 3 out of 7. You know, there's some nuance. And the other question was the question about whether a power of attorney falls in the same category of ownership as the other categories of the ordinance. So I appreciate it if you could kind of respond to both of those and the short answer.
Certainly, and I provided written legal opinions to Director Port that I believe he circulated in advance of the meeting tonight. But let's start with the notice question. The notice question under 48 section 11, there are three elements as to whether or not notice as to how the property at Water Street might be required to have notice. And let me just say up front, my analysis is that both the statute and the case law are inconclusive with respect to whether the property at Water Street is required to be given notice. And so I've determined that the notice that was provided was sufficient and correct. And so let me just go over just a couple of quick points there. The property at Water Street is not an abutter to the abutters within 300 feet. I think the facts are fairly clear there. Whether something is listed on the assessor's list is not conclusive for determining notification or standing. And so the real question is whether the property is directly opposite of 3 Center Street. And the case law is pretty mucky. There's nothing that we could find in the facts and the case law that shows that Water Street, the property at Water Street, the condo, is directly opposite to 3 Center Street. It may not be a bad idea going forward to give, as broad a notice as possible, but in this instance, it was not required. So I find that the notice is sufficient for this hearing and for the prior hearing. And I'll stop there if there are any specific questions. If not, I will go on to the question about the power of attorney.
Are there any questions on that matter? No, okay, go ahead.
All right, so the question as to whether an attorney of fact is legally authorized to act in relation to an STRU as the owner of record. And if you recall, an operator is a natural person who is an owner of record or is legally authorized to act in relation to the STRU as the owner of record. And the definition provides some examples, but those are just examples and they are not a limited list of who can be an operator. So I think when you look at the power of attorney, which I did have a chance to look at in this instance, and these are, I think, somewhat fact-specific circumstances. In this instance, the power of attorney provides all of the authorities that an operator would need to operate the property. And so I conclude in this instance that the power of attorney does indeed provide Ms. Bartholomew with the ability to be an operator for this property.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for? Yes, Bob.
I guess now's the time to address this. Attorney North, thank you very much for the analysis. Really helpful in understanding the context. I read through the documentation and went back to the zoning ordinance, and I looked at this relative to the definition of operator's agent rather than operator, to the power of attorney that was granted. And I looked at the definition in the zoning ordinance, which basically says that an operator's agent is acting on behalf of the operator. I looked at the power of attorney document, it says powers were granted to Ms. Bartholomew to act on behalf of the operator, very consistent with the language in the zoning ordinance. So, I mean, it seems to me that you could also write an opinion that argues that the power of attorney is consistent with the definition of operator's agent. What concerns me in this is that this might establish a precedent, because the way I understand the trust, the same trust would own the property on Franklin Street and own the property on Center Street.
That's incorrect.
There is a third party established by the power of attorney that would operate property property on Center Street. And it just seems to me that that's a little bit outside of the intent of the zoning. So I'm looking at the language and it just, I mean, my first impression was that power of attorney was more consistent with the definition of operator's agent. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Certainly. So first of all, a couple of things. First of all, as I said when I started my comments, these are all very fact-specific analyses. Secondly, you don't get to the intent of the language of an ordinance unless the language isn't clear. And the way I read the ordinance, the language is clear, and I made my determination that the power of attorney, person holding a power of attorney can be an operator. And I don't think that it is necessarily the same thing as an operator's agent. I think the power of attorney provides broader powers than some agencies, and it may very well depend on the particular agency and the scope of that agency. But in this instance, the power of attorney here is sufficient to grant this person the ability to be an operator of a parcel. And I think I answered in my last question, in my legal opinion, more than one individual can file an application for an investor-owned STRU based on the plain language of the ordinance. But obviously not more than one individual can be an operator. And here you have someone holding a power of attorney as the operator. So I don't think it's precedent setting. I think it's really going to depend on the particular facts of the particular circumstances.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a similar reading as my colleague, Mr. Coop, but so a question for you, Attorney North. I also appreciate the analysis. To the extent it's an opinion, I was starting to form a different opinion as well, with perhaps less expertise. So one threshold question I have for you is, it's my understanding this is revocable, right? So,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that word. This is what?
So a two-part question. The first one's yes or no. So the first question is, my understanding this is revocable. Is that correct? It's not a durable power of attorney, right?
It is, I'm sorry, it is, I don't have the power of attorney in front of me tonight because I'm not at home, but it is a power of attorney under Chapter 190B, and it I believe it is good until death or disability of the individual who granted the power of attorney.
So it's non-revocable, essentially, until like a power of attorney in a medical situation?
Well, any power of attorney can be revocable at any time, but it is intended to be good until death or until death, actually, not disability. It is, I believe it is good through disability, but any power of attorney can be revoked.
Oh, okay,
if the power of attorney were be revoked, then the facts would change here. So
right.
that
So
power of attorney has to be in place for the operator to be able to be the operator.
So I think it's pretty clear from the facts that who the beneficial owner is, and the use of beneficial owner versus operator, those are two different terms as well. But let me throw out a question. If this power of attorney, if this person who holds the power of attorney were to do some of the more extreme rights of power of attorney, like try to dispose of the property or gift it to somebody, would those acts cause or allow the person who granted that authority to revoke it in that situation? Are they really that broad? Because as I read this power of attorney, it really does give the same kind of rights that a property manager usually has, which has the right to sign contracts on behalf of owner, has the right to even go into litigation for eviction proceedings, things like that. That's quite common in property management agreements. So I read this as being somewhat limited as a power of attorney that's revocable and doesn't really grant the person that would be holding this like a ton more authority than an operating agent would. I was coming to a very similar conclusion. So the question is, I'll repeat it because I buried it with a lot of talk, is if the person who holds the power of attorney went to do something really extreme, like sell the property or gift it to somebody or gift it to themselves, could it not be revoked by the beneficial owner in this case?
It could, and as I said earlier, the power of attorney has to be in place for there to be a separate operator here. If there were no power of attorney naming a natural person, then you would not have the ability to get this license or this special permit.
Thank you.
Anything else? I would follow up on it. I just another follow-up question on this question of operator. So the ordinance basically says that persons wishing to operate STRU shall apply for. And so then there's the word operator, the definition. So in your opinion, because there's the term operator, which is seems to be the recipient of a special permit, would the special permit be granted to a person who is defined as the operator in this case? In other words, the application is from a truck.
Yeah,
Should-
I believe that's correct. And the definition says an operator can be a natural person who is the owner of record or is legally authorized to act in relation to the STRU as the owner of record. So the permit is granted to the operator in this instance. And it can be someone other than, under the language, it can be someone other than the owner of record.
Okay. And then, so I got a follow-up question, because I don't think we've ever had this conflict. It sounds as though the applicant in this case and the person to whom we would have to grant the special permit be two different people. And is that something we can do? You know,
Yes.
the applicant is a realty trust and the operator is Tiffany Bartholomew. So even though a realty trust made the application, we'll be granting the special permit.
Your mic keeps on cutting in and out, but I think I got the gist of the question. Again, I think I answered this question in my legal opinion, which is more than an individual can apply for more than one investor-owned STRU, but the ultimate license or special permit can only be granted to an owner or an owner as an operator or somebody acting for the owner as an operator. So I think that the license application, and I looked at the applications in the system, the license application clearly asks who the operator is. The special permit application does not ask who the operator is. I noticed when I took a look at the documents. So I think perhaps maybe that could be clarified, but the, you know, the evidence in front of the board, in my opinion, shows that there is an operator who is going to be this person under the power of attorney. And I think you have all the evidence you need in the record to make that determination and grant the application to the operator.
Thank you. Anything for this, Bob?
One last follow-up. Just to clarify again, I'm looking at the power of attorney document, and I'm looking for language that suggests that Mr. Bartholomew would have all of the powers equivalent to the owner of the property. And looking at a paragraph that says to act on my behalf with respect to any and all matters pertaining to the management, operation, and administration of the rental and real estate activities. That's kind of a property management description, not an owner's description. So I just, back to this dilemma of, I don't see a description here in the power of attorney that to me satisfies the owner requirement. That you would need to have in order for this to be a legitimate separate entity managing the Center Street property versus the Franklin.
If you look
So,
at, I'm sorry, please finish.
The language is fairly limited, and the power of attorney is granted, to provide oversight for the benefit of the owners. So I just I don't see that there's a description here that really satisfies what you're saying, that this falls under the category of the definition of operator in the zoning law.
So if you look at footnote 1 in my legal opinion, I address this specific question. And first of all, I think you read in a term that doesn't exist. You said that this is management, operation, administration under the purview of the owner, and it doesn't say that at all. It does say management, operation, or administration, the authority to hire legal counsel, and the authority to do all other things necessary or convenient to carry out the purposes of the power of attorney. And then again, I don't have the power of attorney in front of me, but I believe the purposes of the power of attorney are pretty broad themselves, which are to do essentially anything with respect to the property. And so it's, in my opinion, it's broader than a typical real estate agency, property manager agency, because of some of that last language.
We have a different point of view.
That's fine. I understand that not everyone always agrees with me, but that's what I concluded.
So I agree with the attorney, the catch-all phrase in my opinion.
Okay, so, before we go on, was there something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, 4 Franklin Street is not in this trust. 4 Franklin Street is independently owned by Keith Ablow. 3 Center Street is in the irrevocable trust where the beneficiaries are his children. So what statement of the beneficiary of both properties is Dr. Ablow, it's not true. And that both properties were in the same trust, they are not. 4 Franklin is not in the trust at all. That's why he had to take care of that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing. If anybody wishes to speak to this application. Yes, go ahead. Please come down. Please come down. And, yeah, if you can speak loudly, you can speak it.
Thank you. Jenny Downey, Reaching Cherry Street, Ward 2 City Councilor. Happy again for round 2. Thank you all for being here. So I just wanted to comment, since last we're here, I actually did get quite a bit of feedback from the actual residential abutters who were notified, as they should have been. Parking is an issue. I do want to bring that up. I do want you all to know that it has been an issue consistently throughout the operation of this particular STRU for the past upwards of 10 years that it's been operating, before we got regulation. So it has been an issue continuously, and it still is. While they can provide parking within their application, it is not at the actual residence in the driveway. So that just leaves people to do what they naturally do, which is park out front and double park, walk the sidewalk, and create barriers and bigger nuisance for the actual residential abutters who live there still. It is about 50-50 with residences and businesses. There's about a handful of each, really very small block. But do include the building on Water Street as well as on there's a few more residences surrounding it. So there's a lot of folks to consider beyond just the businesses that happen to be there, which literally there's maybe, I think. So back to my point about the parking, it is definitely not what the ordinance, the spirit of the ordinance is definitely not at all. I'm just going to state that very flat. What the council did was try to create something thoughtful that would be by good players. And we did limit it to 1 person. And I'm sorry for the problem with that, but this is circumnavigating that. This is just, the worst kind of example of circumnavigating the law and skirting what was put in place very, specifically. And it's disheartening, to say the least. So with the parking issue, that is hopefully gonna be considered because it is definitely an issue for the neighbors. And I'm sure along with that, the transient back and forth is as well. So I'll end it there, but please do your diligence again and consider all this.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to be? Heard? Anybody, anybody?
For you. Bruce Vogel, would you like to address the board?
Are you ready for me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry I didn't put my picture up. I should have. I didn't. Anyway, Bruce Vogel, I can give you my address as an owner of Unit 2 at 32 Water Street, though I do reside in Annapolis, Maryland, and I'm happy to give you that address as well. The actual legal address for that 32 Water Street condominium is actually 5 Bromfield Court in Newburyport, which is a property I own as well. So I have numerous properties and numerous addresses. I'll try to keep this short as I can. I do have concerns, a couple of things. First, I would like to speak to the notification effort out of a abundance of caution. The planning director asked that that the whole building be reported or now, and only 3 of us were. When it was the announcement was drawn up, instead of noticing that it was A through G on the city records, it was read as A through C, so only the ground floor units were notified. I did not receive the ZBA notice. I think that might have been something to do with maybe my mail forwarding at the time, I don't know. But I did receive this eventually for this meeting. Specifically as to whether or not we are abutters to abutters or whether we're abutters, I think that falls to the property lines. And earlier I did forward to Chair the recently done survey of our property when we redid our parking lot. And the property lines that the city describes and the property lines that we have are different. So I would challenge the planning board to perhaps take a closer look as to whether or not that most southern line of the applicant's property, I would call it the southern line, whether I believe that 90 degrees off that goes right into our driveway, which then I would think that would make us an abutter. But clearly that's fuzzy, as is expressed by the city's attorney. Secondly, I believe that this whole point of a power of attorney is an incredible loophole being and is somewhat abusing the law, if you will. If you look at that power of attorney, not only is there no compensation, but there's no liability for the power of attorney. So it seems to me as though it's a tremendous hedge, and I feel as though that's an opportunity to open the door for other applicants. I listened to the ZBA meeting, and my first response to that was, I think that perhaps the city ought to sue its own ZBA, but that's my own personal opinion. I am a trustee for the condo association at 3032 Water Street. These are my opinions. I'm not speaking as a trustee of the building. I'm speaking as an owner of the building, though I did, as trustee, go ahead and fully inform all of the residents as well as the owners there of this meeting and of my concerns. I directed them to this meeting. I don't know if they're in the audience or not, but I did direct them. So just so that you know that these are my opinions, but I did do my due diligence in letting all the owners know. I think finally, I would like to say that the very last thing I'd like to say is that as a long time, as a 32 resident of Newburyport and fully aware of all of the publicity around the applicant and so on and so forth, I think that, and I know that this is not in line with the planning board's purview or anything, but as a person of owner of property in that neighborhood, I don't think that this is best for the neighborhood and or for the city. And to the parking issue, I know that sometimes there are cars double parked up on the sidewalk, and it's hard enough to get through and in and out of our driveway as it is. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Bruce. Is there somebody else who was wanting to speak?
I don't see another hand raised.
Okay. In that case, I will close the public hearing and, ask for, further discussion, followed by a motion and a vote. First of all, I want to apologize to Jen, because I realize that you should also be, because we have Heather absent and vacancy. We actually have two missing full members. So both, Jen and. Okay, start the discussion. Does anybody wish to have further discussion or to make a motion?
I make a motion,
Okay,
favor,
in favor of granting special permit?
yes.
Could I, offer a couple of amendments to your motion? And you can accept that as written if you agree. I think because of this question about the operator issue, I think that I would like this special permit to be granted to Tiffany Bartholomew as the operator. And to be subject to a license to be granted to the responsible party for the SPU. And then just to tie things up, because we're late in the process. This special permit will expire on June 30th, 2027. Which is all investor SPUs should expire. Do those seem okay to you, or do you discuss those further? Fine, okay. Is there a second to the motion? So a motion by Charlie, second by, further discussion. Before we move over. Okay. Then I will do a roll call. Alden,
Yes.
Bob,
No,
Charlie,
Yes.
Jamie,
No.
Jen,
No.
Brian,
Yes.
and, doesn't matter what I vote at this point. I will vote no just a minute. Because it fails anyway. It is, 3 in favor and 4. The special permit is not granted. Okay, because we needed what, five positive votes. And we had 3. Okay, moving on to the next item. The next item on our agenda is the application of formal permit, 6 Doyle Drive.
Home, 605.
Welcome back.
How's it going?
So you have.
think I have.
provided some additional information.
Yes. Was able to contact National Grid, actually put the email response in my attachments from National Grid, showing where the utility easements came in through the property, through the registry of deeds. And she informed me that I should reach out to the other aspect of National Grid, the gas company, and they informed me just to have Big Safe come out and verify where the gas lines were. And I uploaded the photos. They come up a couple months ago to do some work anyway, so the photos were still there. And I've also uploaded HOA document verifying their approval for sunroom, as well as the updated plans for the width of the sunroom in respect to what they're potentially, how far it is from the setbacks that you're requesting.
So, in terms of the easement, is- so
I
we don't
can
have-
show you there's a diagram, or there's a drawing showing where the utility easements come in through the property on the back right part of the property, the back, bottom right corner actually, and don't come in through the old proposed easement, utility easement that was on the original. drawing. Yes, that one. Yes.
A lot of questions, lot 80.
Yep. comes in that way, and it comes in through the back of the property, and that's what I took photos of to verify.
So then, what you're saying is that there is no easement along Doyle Drive at all?
She had no record of it. There's an email from, National Grid in there. The person basically who I contacted about any type of easement or establishment of an easement that was there, she's referring to the registry of deeds and certain pages and articles saying that as well.
And
You just think issues here. Also. Recent. Easement itself. I just wanted to reiterate something. Just say this from my experience. Easements that read through the light. This goes back. Where we typically have. I think what I'm reading there. Here, but I think seeing there was indication basically that the easement was attempted was installed, but also to allow the future maintenance of that, but not necessarily found in a specific area that was simply impede the ability of putting the here in that. That was, I'm looking for the obstruction here. Is there, does it overlap at all? What I'm seeing was, akin to what I've seen before, is that it's a little bit more, compared to see, an easement, a little bit less descriptive, more depth, but a little bit more like preservation of the keep there, rather than saying, like, easement, normally see other whole, to keep other things, maybe put into that area, so that stretch. So I think this is a bit different. Easement thing. These are, solid. I don't think we have here myself with the easement being in conflict with what we proposed.
I mean, my concern was that the someone was being placed on an area that the developer had shown as being an easement.
And I think that's a concern, even in the present day, because we still see that. We received something online, yes, we got. And this is basically them telling us.
Well, this is the utility,
Yes,
which is not what we're talking about.
exactly, but they didn't have it. They didn't have it.
I think that we should be getting some, I mean, we could act on, right, but we act on it better, we want to act on getting something from the developer showing that there is no easement.
I think the second thing would be what you might have to get approval, but you're not going to proceed with the permit. Yeah, I mean, you guys have been trying to get tax bills for 3 years now. So concerns.
So it could be that you could just give us some documentation for that one without going through all of it. I just want to make sure that we're not doing something in conflict with something that he's already done.
Yeah.
So is the thought then that you're concerned that there's another type of easement that the developer has recorded or failed to record?
Yeah.
It's not a utility easement.
Well, it's a utility easement, but it's not designated as a national grid, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, it's for some other.
for something, yeah. Yeah, exactly, could be, it's because it's shown on the plan, we approved the plan. And we don't know where that is. And it could be, and we know that he's done things differently than we've got an as-built plan that came in, here on our agenda for the 18th.
I had a chance to review and
It
see.
doesn't show any easements. So it shows a whole bunch of lines, but doesn't show any easements. So,
I guess the only thing I'd like to say is that all the utilities are in. I just would, I understand what you're trying to say in terms of what the utility easement would be referring to or put in place for anything future. But in terms of anything future, the fiber optics, cable,
Right.
power, sewer, gas are already in as well too. So I just,
No, I understand, I
Yeah.
understand that, I guess,
Because the point I was making is that, and, to Andy's point that, the National Grid has a rights and permits department. They have more lawyers than most companies. The first thing they do before they do anything is gets rights and permits. They don't dig, they won't put any equipment in until they have those. And they're not really concerned about a site plan and all those. They do it there. They have certain criteria that they use. So I think that's been satisfied. But to your point, you don't know if there's some other thing that they.
I guess my point is, what's the point of us, asking for easements on the plan if we're not gonna, if we're not gonna, pay any attention to it in the future?
And it could have just been proposed too, and then
Right.
changed.
But they were approved.
Yes.
That's the point, they're approved on the plan, we haven't seen a release.
Yeah.
I mean, he's put you in a bad, you're the big,
Everybody was involved.
yeah. In one way or another, right?
It is what it is, but I just think in terms of satisfying this board, that shows that, at least from what she's verifying the record, is that these were what they used to install utilities in terms of where they go in. And then in these two, there was something coming in that would verify that this was a utility easement. Let's say correctly.
Ask a question.
Yes.
Andy, I know it's a little out of sequence, but you might know the answer.
Sure.
Because my first question was, how much of bond do we have? And you said it's on the agenda, so immediately was gonna look at it. So we have 72,700. Right?
Related to the remaining,
Right, so we have some real money, but the question for you is, are there things beyond the as-built without, because I just found out it's on next meeting's agenda, so I haven't reviewed it yet, obviously, but is there anything else material that he has to deliver that?
No, I'm thinking.
Other than this?
Sure, I'm gonna do it briefly, but because I don't want to, what I think what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
There were some things that were expected to be built. They then were original. We saw that most notably in the case of lot 10. The, the basement basically has a little space, a little groundwater. So that whole bunch of them come back and forth with that issue, and then we also found working with public service. Most part, they're low day, but I haven't heard an indication from the Department of Public Services that there's an issue we pursue that. It's an issue per se, but it's quite obvious that they weren't necessarily following the letter. They made variation of the field that is. You see now is management, it's well late in the process. Is perhaps showing different conditions or not well documented conditions that they're going to.
So the other thing, I didn't have a chance to look at this either, but I'm looking at it now, the thing that's on the agenda next meeting, and it shows underground electric right where you're under it. So it's right there. So there's an underground electric going exactly where the utility easement was. I don't know why, why that conflicts with the information. It's,
Can we insist on
there is,
update?
well, we're trying to get it.
James'
Yeah.
point that we keep that.
So there's-
But we have some leverage, I guess, what my point is. It seems there's a moment in time.
Okay, well, yeah, I think it's worth noting, I guess, these are the content I saw. That this is the electrical, it seems to be hitting this electrical, like, all right.
Yeah.
It may be that this line type is showing an easement corridor, if you will, or direction where the utilities are going. But it may be that this line type may require some clarification, because my guess is that it may not actually mean, excuse me, that they're going to be the bounds through there again. It may mean that this is the corridor that's being referenced between the reasons. Oh, I think that would be more akin to my experience.
But the key of the lower right says the underground electric.
So in the pictures that I have, though, you can see that the utilities run down the street. The electrical lines run down, which would negate that saying that's where the electric.
And you said you had Big Safe
Dixie came out like 4 months ago.
Yeah, so they flagged it, so they'll tell you exactly where it is.
Yeah.
They're flagging the services, and then they were flagging the whole.
Big Sig will do whatever you ask them to do, they'll do it.
I mean,
in
three
6
photographs, right?
Yes,
And the three photographs, look at the.
they're the gas utilities coming to that. So they basically stretch on the other side of the street going down towards.
So we
But
see,
I think what the chair is getting at is that the line shown there is not an overhead wire
Yes.
there. It has to be this plan to be the reflectors, you certainly use it in a matter by showing a line underground there.
and it's
Yeah,
showing,
and I think the point is, they probably didn't update them, they don't want to spend the money to do the as-built, it costs money. If you're gonna do a true survey, it could cost you money, but as Jane points out, there's money available to force them to do it.
Brian, question for you, so you seem to be our resident expert in dig safe, like. I know just not being dangerous, but don't they put tape over high voltage electrical lines so they could actually trace it, and would dig safe
They
do
do.
that?
Do
So
it,
dig safe
they'll
would be
know.
more reliable than any drawing, 'cause-
They'll know.
yeah,
And so the utilities all participate in that, so if you called in a dig safe, you were gonna put in a fence, or you're gonna put in
Did
something.
you call Dixie?
Yeah, so what happened was is when they were closing out lot 10 behind me, Daly came in and hardlined all of the downspouts and put a catch basin in the, basically in the bottom right-hand corner of my property, and they came out to mark the utilities for that. So that's what I had.
Yeah.
Verification of, and
But to your point, they'll do whatever you ask them to do. So they'll paint a true picture with their own drawings, they have their own, if it's in the street, they have their own survey team, and on private properties, someone can put a backhoe through a piece of line, so
well,
they're
if
pretty.
they'll do whatever you ask, will they draw that, will they paint that line on the ground if you ask? them?
Well, they'll tell you where it is.
Yeah,
They won't necessarily. I mean, it's the same company that you'd hire to do the survey of the utility layout, right? If we had an open field, we didn't know. To hire a company to tell you exactly where everything is, and they wanted it to go.
They should to the best of their ability, the best of the plan, which I will say is, you know, I'm not criticizing in any way, just because it's the way things are, it's, you know, makes better, accurate, definitive, detail, everything is. We'll mark up the best of their ability to cover the ground, so for instance, dictate, go out there, you know, the best of their ability, it's in line, on the grass, essentially, would be.
So Alden and I just participated in this because they replaced a 100-year-old gas line down our street, in their street.
Yeah.
And the way they did that, and where they knew where to cut, and they did every drop service, it was gas, but they had to find every other thing, and there's markings all over, it's like a puzzle piece, you can see every color code and so forth, but again, my opinion would be, when they did this plan back then, that's what they thought the routing was gonna be. And, you know, everything's just mysterious, it's
The
open.
missing information is, you get dig safe through identify what's there.
Yeah.
The missing information is there any legal documentation that gives someone rights to an easement in the future that dig safe would not be.
So it's either utilities have the
That's-
right,
That's the piece that we're looking.
or there's some other rights granted, but what would you grant it for? But it's not uncommon, we own this, it's not uncommon to lay out, rights of way, because you don't know what the actual condition is gonna be. And then at some point, and National Grid does it all the time, they have rights and they just give them back and say, no, these are the actual rights.
I guess my concern is that if, in fact, that electric line is not there, which is being somewhat alleged, you know, the old electric line goes in from the street to the back of the property, then there's no way they ever go to grant not this application, to release a bond because
I have.
dishonest information.
Yes, yes.
They're not inaccurate.
This is, when I was finishing my backyard, putting that, and they say tunnel because of lot 10, just so you know, and this is the picture of the verifying where the electrical comes into the back of the house, and I mean, if I could pass it around, you can see where the cable is and everything else like that. It doesn't come in through the side there, it comes in and tees out in the street, basically goes up.
But what's showing here is that it comes across the street to the point of the property line between 8 and 10.
Yeah.
And then it shows it wrapping around 8 and going all the way behind 6 to feed 4. And I'm really just concerned about this. I hate to say it in public, but this does not seem to be factual information you're presenting.
I guess I agree with the chair. Yeah. You've seen that unfortunately. This process. You know, I can't think of a lot of situation, but unfortunately I agree with the situation there. The question I guess I have, given that something just submitted this material to circle back on the end of minutes. Reach out to them to talk and dialogue, and so I don't know, I'm just thinking, see how that links to the fact that they gave us an as-built plan simultaneously with this discussion. Or attempted to clarify this.
Yeah, I reached out and they said that they would provide, they said that they've attempted multiple times to provide the town member, I did.
They were proposing something.
Yes, yeah. I
Andy, could you have the title talk for that drawing?
Yeah, sorry, it's hard to, they don't give me a.
Yeah,
Yeah, for the red number.
Yeah.
Still up.
EA.
Concerns.
Got much on that one.
yeah, so you're right, they haven't done anything with the electric.
So I think the action is pretty simple. You can just say, we don't believe it to be an accurate as-built.
Yeah.
They can go do their research and they can send people out and they can do what they were supposed to do at the beginning. That's, whether you pull the bond for that or you just request that it be done and not give them approval, I think is weighty enough.
And this will be a separate discussion on the 18th with the attorney.
I hope we can have the engineer for the bill, just the attorney.
Yeah, I would be surprised. I would think that's logical here.
Yeah, I think we should use that information. I don't think we can discuss it.
Right.
Yeah.
If you have a technical question, it wouldn't be fair to ask the answer.
Frankly, it didn't appear as if they had.
Somebody do this.
Okay.
Okay, so, does somebody actually stand it? No, it's not saying.
The company, but not the state.
Right.
Somebody contemplate.
We do have the attorney's letter here. We at least have the attorneys.
I think that, this is beyond your issue. I think we need to,
It does affect me though.
it doesn't, well, it may or may not. It's just,
Okay.
I think we just need to say to Andy that we need to have a stamped plan. We need to have a plan that, that says, we're all engineer. In order to.
Yeah, I think that, I give it some. Same communication we gave previously. Excuse me. Yeah. Easily signed. Whether or not they do anything.
Well, I think that part of the, as long as you communicate to them, if we have these concerns. We want to have a stamp engineer. That's all. we can.
Is the information you got from National Grid, did you convey that to the developer?
Yeah, I basically told him what the situation was and just wanted to see if they had an as-built from a property. He said he would get it to me. So he said that they have submitted as-built for the property, but in terms of correlating to what is there and what isn't there. So, yeah.
Okay, let's leave that aside. And talk about the substance of the application. So you provided to us two plans. You provided your original plan, which was a 12-foot addition, and a second plan, which is a 10-foot addition.
Yeah.
And the, actually, before we talk about that,
Mhm.
I want to understand, Andy, again, how much leeway does the board have?
This is written, you have more latitude than just the 50%. Sort of starting point, it's interesting the way that it's where you get. It basically says in essence, with the planning board may grant a waiver of 50% setback. But it also says that the board finding consistent with the purposes of the issue. If it's consistent with that, it can go beyond that. Because the presumption that the board is sort of making that finding, if you will. So to speak. But the board can essentially go beyond that, so in fact, you know, like 50% is not at the end. But I think understandably, regardless of where at some point becomes.
So the 50% is that dash line?
I believe that in your.
That was, yes.
That was based on,
And
That's not.
it's not, but we have 8 feet and the 50% is 12.
Yes.
So that's. So basically,
Instead of going,
and both of them are special permit. Both of them are amending the special permit.
yes,
Whether we went to 12.5
yes,
or to 8,
yes.
no, in your mind, there's no, the only distinction is we have to make a finding that it is second, that we're going beyond the 12.5.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah. that's- The, you know, indicating that it's reasonably consistent. So. There's more nuance to that. Or you're saying, you know, this was the neighborhood. Making the neighborhood. Big. Here the OSRD was, you know, very open space on it. Worse for that. You're 50% hard. Of course.
And in terms of the way the staff memo is written, in order to go beyond the 12.5, we have to make a finding that potentially furthers the purposes and intent of the OSRD section and the listed the.
Oh, now this is more research. So. So the question of whether or not this is necessary for that ordinance, you know, you could do the paper, doing anything to achieve that. You must certainly make sure you do see that, you know, that brings in the ordinance. Yeah, he said that. You should know which neighborhood should be allowed to be tighter. Give the neighbor anywhere. Yes. You're fundamentally still.
And my question, was just wondering, again, what our latitude is. So would you say that if we found that it's supposed to be one of the purposes of the intent, one of the 7 purposes, of the intent, that would be, okay.
Yeah.
Because obviously it doesn't do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. You expect.
Can I ask about that components are?
One quick question, Chair. Plan you presented, meeting, sunroom was 12 feet by 18. It's now 10 feet. But
yes, I just took it the full length of the house, just to,
understand.
Yep.
Just wondering if that change has been viewed with the home.
yes, at the most updated.
That you signed off.
Yes, yes.
Then you wanted to say something?
No.
Rick's understand.
Yeah.
With respect to the 50%, anything beyond 12.5 feet?
Anything intruding into the 12.5 we have to make a determination that furthers the intent of. Okay, I guess just for purpose of good order, I will hear it. Ask if anybody wishes to be heard of this.
Bring anyone this time.
And, seeing no hands, I will close it. And we can move on to motion, any further discussion, motion? And I guess I would say that we have essentially two proposals for us. The 10 by 24, the 12 by
18.
So someone could make a motion for one, and I suppose motion failed, we could make a motion, could we make a motion, second, could make a motion.
Yeah. you could start.
So, is there any further discussion before? Yes, Jamie.
Are you really saying that which plan is in our hands? I'd like to. This preference. I don't remember, maybe you said last time.
Well, I think he came with the
In-
bigger,
in
the
difference.
deeper. And then when was concern was raised, he came back. and-
Yeah.
So my assumption is that your preference would be the one that goes further.
No, I mean, this one, the 10 by 24 works for us as well. It's just more or less. Yeah, giving us more room, in terms of what the sunroom would be if it's. We figured just aesthetically, just extend it that further, just to tie it into the whole building. The 10 by 24. For us, my wife is actually more in agreement with that one, so. I'd have to say that.
When he comes home tonight,
I mean, just in terms of saying that, it'd be longer and we could, have more room for our two boys. She was like, just do the whole length. And I was like, fine.
Perhaps also having setback, you might avoid any potential easements.
Be helpful.
Yeah.
And I figured that would at least give, be able to say, yes, we're into it a little bit, but there's still enough room there. If anything were to come in, that they would be able to do whatever they needed to do.
Was it typical width of the easement? Did they 6 feet? Well, yeah.
Well, there's none of these specificities that are following the easement. Yeah.
We were guesstimating from the proposed that it was 6 feet.
6 feet.
Yeah. But that, it doesn't verify that.
the only time you'll see that change is if they need to bring a truck in, right, true utility easement. Most of it's just a bigger.
I'll make a motion to approve the 10 by 2.
Okay, motion to approve the 10 by 6. Is there a second?
Second.
1 second. Is there any further discussion for moving into?
Are we making it subject to determining easement is located?
I do think that'd be reasonable, just if I didn't know how to say it. I mean, I think it goes without saying, can't build it in easement, so that not necessarily even our purview, it's a legal issue that we can need to stand.
Yeah, the only question I guess, given the, some specificity in your end, as to what you would. By all. Some understanding what you think would be done. The question here is, what they said this about, what not be easement is. If it's not. Issue that. Include this.
It's like the first one, that's.
Yes.
I mean, so first run at that, I think would be that, so long as there's no physical construction in that area,
Right.
that'd be the bare minimum, so.
Whatever.
in the area in which this sunroom will be constructed. So as long as there's
No
no
physical, utility.
physical utility in that side yard,
And
essentially. If it-
you'll know that when you do the dig save.
Well, I took the pictures though too, showing that there's no.
Right.
But if you needed proof outside of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it seems like based on the information we have, odds are there's no electrical ducting, right? So the physical is covered, but to, I think Bob's point earlier, like, well, there could still be an easement. So the worst case scenario is like, sure, the electric company built it a certain way in the middle of the street, but when they come later, there's a problem, they want to relie it, they have the right to put it in there and demolish your sunroom. That's a risk you're kind of taking. I don't know if we can fully protect the applicant from that with the information at hand.
So my,
Except if they didn't report it, in other words, that the utility documentation is what they have established as their rights. There's no other rights that float out there for someone to come in. The developers, the only one that could have establish those rights. And to your point, if it's physically already there, it would be rare for someone to come up and dig to put something in.
So I mean, I guess, all we could do, if we want to approve it tonight and not touch it again, is to just give fair warning to the applicant that that's the worst case scenario, even if it's fairly remote. But it's not really a zoning matter, it's,
well, the.
I mean, we still have this, it's weird, we still have the as-built on our agenda for the next week, and we might learn more, hopefully that's before you actually start building.
So if that as-built, that we could reject that. And just say, there's physical evidence that it's not accurate, right, to the developer. And then he can go back with the engineer if he paid him, which is usually why you don't stamp a drawing.
Yeah.
And you don't update a drawing, right? And just put it on it and say, we want a stamp drawing with the actual condition. And then that solves the rights issue. And then DigSafe says, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing there. It was put during construction. There was no temp service. There was no, some of those things that happen to get clean.
Then you,
You need a drawing that shows easements as well as actual.
Yeah.
So maybe the language is,
Yeah, exactly.
maybe the language is along the lines of subject to determining work construction, the addition does not impede or interfere with any easements of record.
On record, we know that there was no, there is, it's not, nothing's been. So,
But we're requiring the answer. That's
I see.
The construction needs an easement as the construction, like.
not true.
Yeah, and we, once utilities get set, they don't come back, dig them up, and that's not, they're not in that business. They're in the business of saying, I need rights to get to it in an emergency, I need to be able to dig, I need to know where I'm gonna dig. And they'll have their telltales of where the actual lines are, so I don't think there's any specific risk, but we have to tie it in as us, so again, I kind of follow you.
and to
The
James,
question is, how do you put a date and time? Because you could say, sometime in the future, 10 years from now, someone could pull out a record somewhere from an as-built that says, I have those rights. If it's never reported, that's irrelevant.
Right, it's not the registry, it's not.
Right. It's not anything.
but that at least was in the registry for where the electrical comes in.
Correct.
Too. And I know it's a different matter in terms of the utilities, but where they actually have where they actually laid the cable and the.
Correct.
Yes.
Well, the attorney's letter just said that no lots could be released till the easements were recorded. On the screen.
Your approval state the setback. We're approving 8 feet as a setback from the property.
I think it's not, I think it's very, it's narrow.
They have.
No, we're talking about the, something. So the sunroom, we look at that sunroom.
So I think it's a separate matter, but to the point of the developer coming in, you have right to squeeze them for everything they own.
It is 8 feet.
Right, every requirement back to the original. But I don't think that should. And then you can do it on the other, you can just say, show me this, what you have for records.
Can I ask a question? I've actually never had to utilize this, but with respect to a bond, is there a time limit and can we utilize?
Yeah.
So in other words, if we can't get them to do what we need them to do, it's interfering with some of the homeowners, can we say,
Yes.
all bets are off, we're gonna use the funds?
And once you notify somebody that you're about to pull the bond, it's suddenly get very.
Yeah, we can buy this
They
thing.
call the engineer a record, they beg, they pay them, and then they have to go out and do what they. This is the way that works.
You know. So why dance around it?
Well, all I can say is we communicate to the development team. They should have the, survey, this engineer, whoever's all there. For
Now, I'd like to not come back to this.
Yeah.
So,
We can work, I mean, give it to you. We can work the language.
Yeah.
We need, we should verify. It's just not-
I think Bob's suggestion about if you accept that, Jamie, the amendment is to.
Yeah. 100%.
Say that.
So that as part of the motion, that we would be improving the plan. Expansion, provided does not get.
Well,
maintains.
Yeah.
But I think also Bob's point is that, I mean, when it starts to curve now, because it goes slightly above that,
It's tighter.
it might be slightly less than 8 feet.
That might not be as, because I was just going off of where, like, if you were to see like where they actually might have, that dotted line is the,
It's not exactly the same curve at the end.
It might have.
Yeah.
it follows it. I mean,
I'm looking at,
there's
My
two
map.
markers in that, that's the other thing part of it as well too. Yeah, because it kind of both goes out a little bit, if you see it.
I don't know if the definitive anything about it.
I think the intent of the drawings, Bob, are you okay? The intent of the drawing is pretty clear, and if it goes to 7 foot along, the drawing, that's
The
consistent.
drawing shows 2 8-foot,
Yeah.
so we just go on.
Yeah.
And it's still within our latitude. You can make that decision, right? Even if it goes.
Yeah, you can say parallel to the existing structure for the length of one.
Or just
Aesthetically
just the point of that plan.
Yeah. Keep it.
I guess my only point is, my only concern is, if you build to 10 feet with a sunroom, now because of existing conditions, you end up closer to 8 feet. Then it's starting to get a little tight, and all the documentation I've been looking at, is fuzzy as to where line is related to line, and space is actually there. So I would hate to have
it does
to
go
build
off.
10 feet and end up, 6 or 7 feet from the property.
Yeah, it gets, as it curves, it actually gets wider towards the back corner, so it kind of flares out a little bit, so I mean, I think it probably would be within 8 feet from all that angles as well.
And then there's another couple feet to the actual curve.
There's like two
Yeah, I would think it something less than 12 and a half feet, we need to.
So,
I see, that's your point.
so, okay, what is the motion at this point?
It'll be helpful to.
So, the motion is
Eight.
to approve the plan with the 8-foot, or the 10-foot.
The 10 foot by 20 foot.
And then what is the contingency or additional provision to go along with that?
that we can put on the email. And in terms of like being able to say, like, if anything in the future would happen, it would be on a more.
Right, I'm just asking, I'm looking.
Yeah.
What do you
So,
consider?
so, the easement discussion, are you saying that
Oh, no, okay, there's two different, I was going to the
just?
numerical thing first.
The easy one.
Yeah, the easy one.
Can we just say we are approving a setback? 8 feet.
Yeah.
So when he surveys it, it comes out to 7, 7 feet 10 inches. It's gotta reduce it by 2 inches, is that what we're saying? Are we saying, yeah,
No, so we're talking about we're
from the current, from the lot line to
the lot line to the edge of the,
Yeah, in other words, if the distance on there instead of 18 feet is really 17 by 10.
Yep.
Maintain the 8, that means the addition has to go down to 9 by 10.
I think it's the easiest thing to do.
So
It says what our intent is.
I support that. Yeah.
And the reason I'm bringing all of this up is I think because you have extended the width, it becomes more of an issue at the. I just want to make sure that this doesn't creep any closer to it. Then you've got lines for traffic. Just, it's tight enough as it's drawn right here. I would just hate to see it drift any closer.
Yeah, I understand that. I just think in terms of like, if hypothetically there isn't one there at the same time, if that utility line. Utility easement is actually out further and kind of curves it, you know what I mean? Wherever they actually put.
I'm talking about curb line versus. Curb line, you know, according to what I'm looking at here, if it moves out a little bit.
Yeah.
That's more better. But I just want to make sure we don't go below. That's close.
Okay. To say it another way, I think maybe, I don't know if you would agree with this, Bob, but if that's really 16 feet instead of 18, it's probably revert back to the other plan. Like shrink it down a little bit, something a little different, I don't know. So. But as long as it's within a couple of inches, gives you pretty much the ability to build what you want.
And plus, if we say the 8 feet, we give you latitude to do what. Then,
Within that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sliding?
Yeah, so wherever it comes
Yeah,
in,
it actually-
wherever it falls in there, stop there so you don't come in past 8 feet.
Yeah, if it's 18.4, you could actually put 4 inches.
But it's in as much as the structure from that lot line. So we're referencing this plan, we're adding, you know, in as much as the extension of the top here, so the other version. In as much as this doesn't go.
I think that's fairly accurate. I think it might even be wider, just given where the boundaries are, and then obviously the land that goes past the boundaries.
Okay, so that, I agree with that. She's in my motion. I guess say that.
So then the last piece is this. We want to say anything particular about the utilities in the building.
I'd be okay delegating it to staff to
Okay.
confirm that there's no recording. That it doesn't interfere.
And it will happen.
Yeah.
Or not.
Is everyone else okay with that? That's not perfect, but.
Yeah, it is, because that really aligns with the development. I'm sure we can come up with some good questions, logic,
We could throw this specific plan up there against the as-built.
100%.
and if for any reason that easement shouldn't be there any longer, then you can ask the developer to release it.
Right.
Or we can, if we
Yeah.
know of it and it comes up next week and we have this, 2 weeks, we have this discussion about.
You guys can put that.
So one thing from side versus the. And I think it's really, it would be really very interesting. Because it is kind of a move over kind of plan. You look at where all the utility lines are going and crossing, and there's one place with 3 separate utilities.
Do we do site visits or are we encouraged to go?
Yeah. You can do it.
They save that whole area as well too, and just verify. I mean, from the ones that were there, but just sort of fresh paint for anyone to see or anything like that. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second?
Yeah.
Second. Any further discussion? In that case, I don't think there's any need for the all the, I don't think there's a need for a roll call. So, So, no, it's,
Jamie,
just
oh,
Jamie.
Jamie. Initiated.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? You're long ordeals.
Appreciate it, thank you. More other sunrooms aren't as difficult.
Glad to see that you can get through the national grid, because that's not always easy, but the developer should be easy, because they have an obligation and they have money that they're gonna try to drop from the bank. And that's usually a pretty good, attention getter, so hopefully we can.
I don't usually encourage turnouts to be necessarily. Meeting where we're having a discussion about the conditions and the closure of the project, just so that there's continuity, because I'm sure what I've seen is different messages being communicated depending on who you're talking to. You make that.
Did you tell us at the last hearing that you were one of the trustees? So I would say that board, whatever that entity is, probably would be a good participant, because you can speak as a trustee.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, and it'd be very helpful. If all of those people here.
Yeah, I only know what could be improved on your lot. I have no idea.
So I think just for you at least to hear whatever.
Yeah.
Conditions.
There's no comment for me right now.
Could be kind of.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. So we are going to pass the minutes. And review those for the minutes, the next meeting. And we have a public hearing next meeting. Accessory development, why don't you bring it up to date?
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. That's why.
You're ahead of me.
Up to date.
Yeah, so the 18th, they do want change, just to be clear, I reviewed asked this last meeting, we posted with the agenda, meeting is the zoning change itself. But there's also the PDF on that. The most recent one we have seen, so even though those things don't actually directly correspond with each other, it's only. Most recently we have seen, administration and having a review and having some kind of. But we thought it would be useful to see at least, also contemplated that same. So you like that. Look at like that is.
And that's an important point is those December 2023 plans could not be built.
If they wanted to look at that, even though it's relevant, it's perfect, I understand that. This is right again. Before. We think it's appropriate. Why?
So next meeting is about the zoning ordinance. The
Yes.
proposed ordinance.
Yes,
It's not the applicant, it's not any.
correct, correct.
And then the jurisdictional issue is still up in the air, who's gonna hear it, right?
And it could be, there's like at least three options, right? One is friendly 40B, one is the zoning ordinance. and the third is- So other, we have a hearing.
Yeah, just other two brief updates and then. Brief updates. Yeah, so 11th, next Wednesday, there's a. To give an update on the spectrum housing, so just briefly talk about. The ADUs that are. The Homes Act. So we'll be covering that briefly, touching on that situation in Newburyport.
Same.
Yeah. Right. So we're gonna, it's sort of a team presentation, explain sort of the landscape of what's happening, because we started with MBTA communities earlier this year, we postponed sort of all actually, but, we have that, we have access to dwelling units because of the new legislation, so we thought it would be good to kind of come down. Also going to the council with the new housing. But, so all have integrated together. On the 11th, or many folks, it's gonna be pushing out to you, we just got this yesterday, apologies, because we just got. So we're taking a look over just make sure it's in order. Ultimately speaking, this is a draft. It's, you know, ballpark. It's not obviously a exact blueprint like that. No decisions are still. But that's, you know, estimation of the city and well, showing the city. That is actually right. We have to, you know, in addition to any or this would be right to you, and it's the council unless you make this, you know, we should need to add a social work. Clubs. Well, we're back to usual, just invitation, right? What's all the
You said you will send
yeah, so we'll push that
online.
Just got because we had just gotten in, we had done. Making sure everything's in the, you know, reasonably consistent with what we like. So I thought it'd be good to deal with the question. Yeah, it's pretty. Well, I will. We can want to wrap that up and obviously get the implementation part of this. Manage to have a production plan that, you know, it's. What, like, either. Meant to be that outline, we'll post it, probably send a link to that. Make the most sense. And then the housing. Confirmation of them, it's over the city council, I assume, it may go into the council next week. I'll speak on it.
So, do you have a sense of when the MBTA zoning is going to go to the sent to the city council?
Oh, yeah, so I mean, I plan right now, like, maybe soon, we'll see. Like, I plan at least to doing that in the. But I, maybe soon, we're going to.
15 could be, yeah.
So we have a couple of, there's a lot. We proceed that. The ADU piece. The ADUs is that would be. So we're pushing out, I think. Oh, sorry. Sorry. We, I'll put it out. We had it last week. So I'll push out to you the updated ADU ordinance that. Usual us. But that's the zoning practice here, be the same. So that had the news that this does that. All this is happening basically. And there could be other zoning changes.
So what is it, other than that, what do you guys do?
Demanding meeting management, we always try to speak out. Before meeting on the regular.
No,
So what do we have as assignments for our next meeting? Do we want to, should be looking at the housing production plan for the next meeting?
Yeah, even though I wouldn't necessarily expect you, given the other agenda items.
Kmart and Doyle Drive should.
Yeah, yeah. So, maybe I think we should tack it on the agenda, but I don't know whether you'll be.
Just put it there, just for, just in case.
Just a question.
Yeah,
I mean, if we read it.
Yeah, yeah. If not. And the ADU piece, even though we won't, the 18th wouldn't be our, if you want that. See, if you want.
there's one thing to highlight, Jandy and I have talked about, the draft that has been presented. Calls for a planning board site plan review. Any detached accessory dwelling.
Correct, yeah, and I know Rick and I talked. But my general sense, I got a vision that I think makes sense. We all on that. But we don't. We're gonna. Why, what makes sense? Yeah, I guess, on taking down to the starter, I'm always open to this guy. Myself. Supporting that. Here. You feel like the majority of issues that are. Might be reportedly addressed by. The perceived latitude of this planning board to sort of almost like discretionary. Site plan approval seems to muddy the water, not necessarily perfect. Not necessarily. So it just, to me, it's not obvious why that piece might. Easily working hard.
And, you know, but when I look at it. I see it as being the unnecessary restriction on accessory dwelling units. When you think about the fact. You know, if you did a garage the same size. You wouldn't need site plan review. You need site plan review for the accessory dwelling unit, and where the ordinance is written. It calls for not only all of the. Standards and criteria normally associated with, site plan review, but there are additional. Site plan review criteria that only apply to accessory dwelling. It just seems like it's. Kind of way over.
Yeah. And I know you and I didn't talk about this directly, but one thing I do notice, and you'll see this when you look at the draft, because the criteria. Read to me more like these sort of nebulous, permit criteria where you're evaluating. Not very detailed things that are under site plan review, you're expected to have. Really, it's just not obvious that this is really doing that in the same format, which to me seems at least potentially to be in the intent of legislation, if not the intent. So to me, that it seems initially didn't seem to make as much sense for the rest of the package. I think is more or less, makes sense.
Does anybody have anything they would like to discuss, announce, present? Other than a motion to adjourn?
We're running out of.
Who's the second? Your second. All those in favor of adjourn? Thank you, everybody. It was a challenging meeting. To come through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah. You're working through it. It's not.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Actually.
Okay, yeah.
Like, oh. It's amazing. Sometimes it's short. Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, but not.